Without hesitation this morning, I have to admit that I fully deny the resurrection of Christ. And everybody that really knows me will know this. Publicly and without any fear of what anybody will think of me, I deny this resurrection. I deny the resurrection of Christ every time that I do not serve at the feet of the oppressed. I deny the resurrection every time that I turn my back on those who are in need. I deny the resurrection every time that I close my ears to the cries of those who are oppressed. I deny the resurrection every time that I do not listen to the cries of the children that's been murdered in this world today through senseless wars. Yes, I deny the resurrection when I support an unjust and cruel system. However, there are moments, even though they are far between and not a lot, that I affirm the resurrection. I affirm the resurrection when I stand up for those who are forced to their knees. And I affirm the resurrection when I cry with those who do not have tears to shed anymore. And I affirm the resurrection when I speak up for those who are silenced. So we are here this morning to celebrate the resurrection, and the question is, how do we do it? Has the resurrection just became a magic trick of God through his Son, Jesus Christ? Or has the resurrection just became to you as somebody that stands on the sideline applauding? What should the resurrection then be if it is not this? Why is it that churchgoers and Christians across the world, their lives has not been transformed by the knowledge of this resurrection? What went wrong? What is wrong? And what can we do about it? Certainly, there's a lot of doubts. There's a lot of doubts of what happened on that fateful weekend. There's a lot of doubts of what does that experience mean to me as a Christian today. There's a lot of doubts, and we are going to look into these doubts this morning because any true faith can stand and withstand deep questions and doubt. If your faith cannot stand doubt, it is not faith. If your faith hides from deep and urgent questions, then it's not faith. And as our faith needs to mature and grow and become a full faith in our lives, then it is the time to ask these deep and urgent questions about something like the resurrection. So here we go. In the liturgy of the United Church of Canada, we follow a lectionary which divides the Bible roughly into three. And every year we read a certain piece, and then we move on in year 2, and then we move on in year 3. And over the extent of the 3 years, we try to cover the whole Bible. But the downside of that is that this year we read, as we read this morning, from the Gospel of John. And we read what he wrote about the crucifixion and the resurrection. And next year, when we come into the next liturgical year, we read, for instance, from Matthew. And we totally forgot what John said because then we only focus on Matthew. And then the story becomes quite easy. Oh, John said this or Matthew said that. But we never get to the point where we put the Gospels next to each other, because when we do that, there's a problem. There's a problem around the accuracy of what the Gospels tells us. There's a problem of what the experiences are from many people that is involved in this weekend that happened during the Passover 2,000 years ago. There's a problem all over the place. And this is what we're going to look into this morning. honest questions about this gospel that we believe in. They took him that night and they trialed him. Justice Haim Cohen, a prominent contemporary Jewish scholar within the Jewish faith and law, gives us some information about the customs and the law of the time when Jesus was trialed. And he said, if you take the customs in the law, which the Pharisee would have defended with their lives because they are well known for following the law to the letter, then the trial was impossible because the Sanhedrin was not allowed to trial anybody outside of the temple and the courtyard. And here they are in the Gospels, trialing Jesus Christ within the house of the high priest. Impossible. Can't happen. No trial was allowed on the eve or during any festival within the religion of the Jewish faith. This was the Pesach, or the Passover. They couldn't have trialed him because it was not allowed according to the law. No trial any time in Jerusalem according to the law and custom of the day can take place after dark. It has to be in daylight. All of this shows us that there's a problem to begin with the trial of Jesus Christ. And it doesn't stop there, sadly. They went on and they accused him of blasphemy, which is impossible. You can only blaspheme according to the law and the custom of the time if you spoke the tetragrammaton. The tetragrammaton is the unspeakable name of God, and it can only be spoken once a year in the holiest of holy in the temple and only by the high priest. Jesus never did that, so the accusation was false. They had to have 2 witnesses to find him guilty, which they didn't have. All of that, and yet we say he was trialed and then taken to the cross. The Gospels seem to struggle with the account of what happened. When he died, Matthew said the graves opened and dead people walked around and they entered the city of Jerusalem. It sounds like a zombie movie in modern time. If that happened, everybody would have spoken about that and everybody would have written it down. And to add to that, there was an enormous earthquake. Mark, on the other hand, the Gospel of Mark, stops before the resurrection. He doesn't say anything about it. I know if you read your Gospel of Mark in the English Bible, there is something about the resurrection. It's been added to the original Gospel of Mark 200 years after the original Gospel of Mark was written down. It's an account by a total different author in a total different style and a total different language, added to bring Mark up to scratch with Matthew, Luke, and John. So there's some political interference into that. And then we get to the crucifixion itself, Jesus hanging on the cross. Matthew says, again, this guy really likes earthquakes. You know, there was an earthquake and then Jesus said the words, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which we looked at on Friday, which we translate with, my God, why have you forsaken me? Wrong. It's my God, this is my destiny. That's the Aramaic words. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. If it was forsaken me, it would have been Eli, Eli, lama ta'atani. Luke, last words on the cross, unto thy hands I commend my spirit. John, last words on the cross, it is finished. These disciples were standing around the crucifixion scene, seeing, experiencing, and living through that horrifying day, and all of them have different words that Jesus said on the cross. How is that possible? And we go on. Resurrection. Again, Matthew, true to his form, an earthquake and an angel descending from heaven to come down and to roll away the tombstone. Luke 24 verse 4, 2 men stood by them in shining garments. John 20 verse 12, 2 angels sitting inside the tomb, one at the head and one at the feet where Jesus was laid out. And then Mary turned around and she saw, which was supposed to be Jesus, and she mistaken him for the gardener. She's just spent a couple of years with this guy and she mistaken him for the gardener. So if we look into this, and we have to, because it's part of our Gospels in the Bible, we can just go in the end and say, oh my goodness, what is true? Well, the truth is, there was a crucifixion and there was a resurrection. How it happened, we honestly do not know. If we have to be honest with each other, we honestly do not know. Because there's so many people replying and giving answers to this that there's not a constant story. There's just doubt and just kind of a story that doesn't make sense. Because the people closest to him gave different stories. So it doesn't matter how it happened that the crucifixion happened. That's the important part. And it doesn't matter how the resurrection happened, that there was some kind of experience after the crucifixion to the followers of Jesus. That's the important part, and that is what we need to focus on and look at. We have to have clear and proper thinking when we do this. And we have to have honesty when we look at our scriptures and at our faith. Because only when we do that, we will find an answer to the question in the beginning. So why is it that most Christians, their lives haven't been touched by the experience of the resurrection? They know it, and they can say the verses, and they can tell the stories, but their lives haven't been touched. Why not? There's no transformation. So let us think clear. And I take you back a couple of weeks ago to this picture. It is Ayanus Kalesi. Now, Kalesi means temple. It's the Ayanus temple at Lake Vaughan in modern-day Turkey. Archaeologically, it was discovered and reopened and cleaned up, and we can see a temple more than 12,000 years old. It dates back pre the deluge, because it was covered by the residue of the deluge. So they covered it up, uncovered it, opened it up, and they say, look at what we have. And on there, in the middle top, in the circle, the oldest cross that humans have today in the history of our history. It dates back to 12,000 years and even older, because we do not know how long the temple existed. We only know when it was covered up, and that was 12,000 years ago. And it was kept for us to look at. There was 3 crosses at the top, and between the crosses, the symbols of the God of the time handing these crosses to everybody that's coming into this temple. And why haven't we been speaking about this for years and years and years? Because this is the stuff that faith is made of. The truth that archaeologically give us. It's a science. It gives to us this. And then we took that cross throughout history and we depicted it in this form. Now this is the cross, how it looked at that time, and this is also the cross of the Knights Templar. Interestingly enough, it's also this cross that is on the robes of the popes in Rome, and it's also this cross that's on the staff and the crown of the royal family in Britain. Not the Latin cross with the long leg at the bottom. This cross is depicted by the Roman Church and by the royal families of this world. And we should ask the question, this is also the cross that we have as a symbol for our Christian faith. So what does it mean? Because this brings us back to the crucifixion. They've put him on a cross. And there was a reason why they put him on a cross and killed him on a cross. Because they wanted to silence him. Because he had a message that they didn't like. Pharisees, Sadducees, Romans, all together didn't like the message that Jesus brought. And if we want to get to the bottom of the crucifixion and the resurrection, then we need to find out what does this mean. What is this? Two blurred pictures of the cross. I want to take you back again. The cross. Do you know what this is? It's a scientific photo of the photons of light. I take you back again. The cross in Ayanus, the cross of the Christian faith. Photon of light. Now, this is one of those aha moments in Christian history in this sanctuary. Because this is an aha. What does it mean? The cross represented light. The cross represented God, because God is light. When Jesus met him at the baptism, what happened? The light shone on him. When Saul walked the way on the Damascus road to be a prosecutor of Christian faith, and the light shone in him, enmoi, the Greek says, he was changed and transformed. This is what transforms Christians, the light of God, not stories, not different accusations, not different earthquakes and people standing up and walking around and applauding on the sidelines. This is what transforms Christian people into people of faith, the light. And that's why we call it enlightenment. And the knowledge will set you free, and the truth will set you free, and it will transform you to become like Christ. We lit this candle and we said, the Christ light. God is light. Scientifically, we prove that by taking photos of the photons, which is the smallest part of the light. And we dissect it, and it changes you. Welcome on the road of enlightenment at Faith United. Amen.